A doctor conducts a study. He follows the rules. He collected 10 years of real patient data. He submitted it for peer review. He passes. It gets published. 5 days later, his medical license is suspended. No hearing, no trial, no due process. Just gone. And the only condition they offer to give it back: stop doing research. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a documented, verifiable sequence of events. And it happened in America in 2020. Stay with me. I'm making this video because of the video I made concerning the HPV vaccine and some comments in the comment section. Before I tell you the story of this doctor, I want you to watch this video.
Were 262 children who had ADHD in the vaccinated group. Amongst the unvaccinated group, there were 0 cases of ADHD. 0.
These ones are just mind-boggling. These conditions were not found at all in almost 2,000 unvaccinated kids. 0 brain dysfunction, 0 diabetes, 0 behavioral problems, 0 learning disabilities, 0 intellectual disabilities, 0 tics, and 0 other psychological disabilities in the unvaccinated.
Despite this, and in contrast to our expectations, again, the author's expectations was they'd conduct a study and probably find vaccinated people a whole lot healthier than the unvaccinated, right? This is what we found. We found that exposure to vaccination was independently associated with an overall 2.5-fold increase in the likelihood of developing a chronic health condition when compared to children unexposed to vaccination.
Despite the good intentions of the field of vaccinology, that is backfiring on us.
Who is Dr. Paul Thomas? Dr. Paul Thomas is a pediatrician based in Beaverton, Oregon. He is not a fringe character. He is not a quack operating out of a garage. He is a board-certified physician who spent years vaccinating children, exactly the way he was trained to, according to the CDC schedule by the book. But over time, something started to bother him. He was seeing patterns in his practice that the textbook didn't explain. Children who were fully vaccinated were coming back to his office more often than the ones who were not. Not slightly more, significantly more. And as a doctor, a real doctor, his instinct was not to ignore it. His instinct was to investigate. So that is exactly what he did. Part 2, the study. Dr. Thomas partnered with Dr. James Lyons Wheeler, a research scientist, and together they examined 10 full years of patient data from his own practice, thousands of children, re-records, re-diagnosis, re-office visits. They look at vaccinated children versus unvaccinated children across a wide range of health conditions. What they expected to find, and this is important, was that the vaccinated children would be healthier. That was their hypothesis going in. That is what the science is supposed to show. That is what we have all been told. But that is not what they found. What they found was this. Vaccinated children had significantly higher rates of Ashman, ear infection, anemia, gastroenteritis, developmental delay, behavioral problems, learning disabilities, neurological conditions. The unvaccinated children in the same practice, same community, same access to healthcare, same doctor, had dramatically low rates of every single one of these conditions. 0 cases of diabetes, 0 behavioral diagnosis, 0 intellectual disability, 0 learning disabilities. The study concluded that exposure to vaccination was independently associated with a 2.5-fold increase in the likelihood of developing a chronic health condition. 2.5 times more likely. That was the finding. They submitted it. It passed peer review. It was published in November 2020 in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. And then the clock started ticking. Part 3, 5 days. 5 days. That is how long it took. 5 days after that study was published, the Oregon Medical Board issued an emergency suspension of Dr. Paul Thomas' medical license. Emergency. That word matters. Emergency suspension is reserved for situations where a doctor poses an immediate danger to the public. Their stated reason that Dr. Thomas had failed to vaccinate children, according to the CDC schedule. Now pause here. Because this man had been practicing medicine for years, seeing thousands of patients, running a large active clinic. And the Oregon Medical Board had known about his approach for a long time. In fact, they had previously asked him to produce peer-reviewed evidence to support his alternative approach. He did exactly that. He produced the evidence. He published the study, and 5 days later, they suspended his license. The same board that asked for the evidence refused to acknowledge it when it arrived. Part 4. No hearing, no due process. Here is where this stopped being a medical disagreement and becomes something else entirely. In any functioning justice system, when you punish someone, you hold a hearing first. You present the evidence. You allow them to respond. You make a determination. That is due process. That is the foundation of fair treatment under the law. Dr. Paul Thomas never got a hearing. The Oregon Medical Board suspended his license, imposed the punishment, and then kept postponing the hearing. Months passed, no hearing. More months, no hearing. His lawyer eventually wrote to the board, pointing out the obvious, that his client had been punished without due process. The board's response: they offered to reinstate his license on one condition, that he conduct no more research. You're blackmailing the doctor. The doctor that is trying to keep your children safe. The ones that is making the money, they're blackmailing him. He should make no more research. That's the only reason, the only condition to give him his license back. Listen to that again. Not address this patient safety concern. Not submit to additional oversight. No. The condition was stop investigating. If you needed any clearer signal of what this was really about, there it is. Did you need extra signal to tell you what it is? Part 5, the retraction. But they were not finished. A month after the suspension, the journal that published the study contacted the author. An anonymous reader had submitted concerns about the methodology. One reader, anonymous, one set of concerns. Concerns, the author says, that had already been addressed during peer review. The journal retracted the papers. 10 years of data, thousands of patient records, a past peer review, gone because of one anonymous complaint. The authors were stunned. They say the journal editorial board knew the concern had already been answered. They retracted it anyway. And now, when anyone searches for that study, they find the word retracted. Not reviewed and found flawed, not disproven, just retracted. Under circumstances that the authors have publicly challenged and never accepted. Part 6, the lawsuits. Dr. Paul Thomas did not disappear quietly. He filed a civil rights and defamation lawsuit against members of the Oregon Medical Board in the United States District Court. His claim that the board maliciously destroyed his practice because he refused to follow federal vaccination recommendations. That he was punished not for harming patients, but for giving them informed consent, for telling them the truth. As he understood it, based on his own data, from his own practice, he is seeking at minimum $35 million in damages. And separately, he had raised the question that sits at the heart of all of this. Has the full CDC vaccine schedule ever been tested as a whole against a fully unvaccinated control group in a long-term study? The answer from mainstream medicine is no, it has not. Part 7, what's this mean? Now, I want to be very clear about what I am saying here and what I am not saying. I am not telling you vaccines are evil. I am not telling you to stop vaccinating your children. I am not telling you Dr. Thomas is right about everything. What I am telling you is that a licensed physician conducted a peer-reviewed study, that the result of that study were inconvenient to a powerful institution. And that within 5 days of publication, that physician lost his ability to practice medicine without a hearing, without due process, with his research retracted by an anonymous complaint, and the only path back was silence. That is not how science is supposed to work. Science is supposed to welcome the uncomfortable question. Science is supposed to say, show me the data. When a system punishes the data, that is not science. That is control. And the question we should all be asking, especially as African people, who have watched entire continents used as testing grounds for pharmaceutical products is who benefits when the questions stop. Who benefits when the doctors go quiet? Who benefits when the research disappears? Dr. Paul Thomas set out to prove that vaccines work. He followed the data to a place he did not expect to go. And the system that claims to be built on science responded not with more science, but with a suspension, a retraction, a silencing. Verify before you publish, question before you accept, and never mistake institutional authority for truth. My name is Inye. Know the truth and speak it anyway. We will keep asking the question they don't want to ask. Share this video. Someone in your circle needs to say it.